All right, so this is all about knocking something out or silhouetting something. And what that means is when you remove something from its background, so it has just all transparent pixels around it. And so we looked at some of the selection tools in the Understanding Selections video, but now I'm gonna go to these three tools here, plus some things that are in the menu and something right here, so just bear with me. I'm gonna skip over this one for a second and show you, back in the day, all we had was this magic wand tool, so to automatic selection. And the way this works is it looks for similar colors, and it has this thing called tolerance. So look, I clicked right here, I had tolerance 32, I got most of this. That's not great, right? I start clicking my dog, I'm not getting really what I want. So then they put in this quick selection tool here. And now this tool, right, is what I could kind of start clicking. So what I'm doing is just clicking and dragging around. And as I click, right, notice every time I let go and I start clicking again, I'm adding more. And this is doing an okay job, but as we zoom in, we see I'm missing all this hair here, right? Maybe if I want to try to add this hair, I could try to do this. Boy, this is going to be a tough one, right, with that. So that's how you do it. Okay, so, but they've added this another tool. But before I even talk about this tool, I want to talk about how you might do selections as a professional that are not using these super automated tools. And the truth is, most designers back in the day would use the pen tool, which is just like the pen tool in Illustrator, right? So that we could knock out something, and I would totally put it all around, and I'd turn it into a selection, or I would use these paths over here. You don't need to worry about that. And the truth is, even with all these new automation tools, I still use that for things particularly that are smooth. So these produce the most smooth edges that you could get. So if I was going to knock out a car, right, I would use that method, and I wouldn't use these automation tools because generally it can make them a little janky, and we'll talk about that, and we'll show you techniques for making it less janky. But okay, that's how we would do it back in the day. But now Photoshop has a bunch of new tools. So I'm going to grab this tool right here, the Object Selection tool. And so all I have to do is kind of drag out an area that I think kind of, covers my dog and doesn't have too much extra junk in it, and then let it go, and boom, look at this. It's done it. Now, it's doing an okay job. It's doing about as good a job as the quick selection tool did, right? It's still not going to be perfect, right? What you have to know is all these automated tools are okay, but you're still going to have to refine them, and sometimes you're just going to have to go in and hand refine them. So, okay, that's good. We could start from there to start working, but I'm not going to even start from there. They actually added fairly recently in here these artificial intelligence tools. So you see here this subject. Now this works when you have one single subject like this. Sometimes it doesn't know what subject to do, but I'm going to go ahead up here to select subject. Boom. Now that got our dog, right? It's pretty smart with intelligence, but again, it's not going to be perfect. None of these tools are going to be super perfect, right? There's a lot of things at work when it's doing this. Artificial intelligence is fine, but what it also does, it looks for the edges, and so what it's looking for is contrast. So once you have a good enough selection, you're going to have to go in and refine it, either through one of two ways, through the select and mask dialog or through a layer mask. So we're going to use a combination of those to get the best best knockout that we can get not using the pen tool. So I can either click this button that says select or mask, or I could go up here to select and mask. Either one doesn't matter. And you'll see that I am, probably when you first get there, you'll probably see it like this, right? Where you can see your object knocked out with the background at some various transparency, right? And I can kind of play with this transparency. So now this is really great. These techniques are actually really great for things that are furry like this, right? While I would use the pen tool for like a car that's smooth, for something like a dog, like notice how the hair here, I would absolutely use this technique. And so what am I going to do to try to make sure I have the best selection? Well, I'm going to zoom in, right? And I'm going to go to this edge here. Now, here's the thing, right? You have all these that you can play with. I usually like going on to black and white to kind of see the stuff that's here. And so I'm going to go on black because our dog is this color and the edge stuff is that color, so that's great. And I am going to refine the edges. So the first thing I can do is, well, we have some things here, right? I could hit object aware. Like, do I want to proceed? Yeah, let's go ahead and let's see what the automation does. And it pretty much did the same thing that it did in the last thing, right? That's basically like using the tool that we just used. So that's not going to help us. Let's go to edge detection, right? Now I'm going to go here and kind of play with that, and right, it can make some differences. Like click this smart radius here, like right? I'm going to go ahead and just leave that as is here. These I never play with. I'm going to actually go to, I'm going to use this right here on the side, this Refine Edge Brush tool. And what this does is, as you paint over edges, you're more telling it, you know, these are areas of contrast, right? So I'm going to just start painting over it, and notice the way that it, right, for a second you see it kind of painting where I'm painting, but now it kind of goes back, and what it's trying to do is take out, you know, that color that it's finding is in the edge, right? So I'm really going in here and painting, right, the edges, right, and trying to find places where it doesn't do a good job, right? And so in here, I'm like kind of giving it a sense of where I want it to find some things, right? That one goes out there. So see what I'm doing here? I'm really trying to get my thing, and right here it's getting a little nasty, but I'll try to get it in. Right, so again, this is going to be pretty good. So right there we have this dog, and that's a pretty good knockout of hair. I'm going to do one more thing, which is click this button that says decontaminate colors, right? One thing that you're always should be aware of as you're knocking something out to put on the background is what I call fringing, right? Or what's called fringing. And so fringing is anytime I see like a color that's obviously not part of it. So right here we see a heavy fringe of the lighter color that's in the background, right? So I'm going to go ahead and kind of just draw on this edge for a second, right? And now you see, right, that fringe is gone. Right there I see some fringing, you know, I see some more dog hair I want to grab, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure I put in this, right? If you ever want to see where you've already drawn around the edge, what you can do is go back up here to show edge, right? And you'll see what you've drawn the edge on. So here, right, I'm going to go right on the edge here because the dog has kind of like these little Sharpie hairs here, right? And so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to get it to do this. And so maybe just painstakingly, I'm going to have to go around the edge for this dog to try to get my things. But I'm not going to do it here. In front of you, right, obviously just pretend I finished it all. Once I'm happy with it, you know, I'm mostly happy with it, what should I do? And that's where you come down to the output to. And what you actually want to do is output to with a new layer mask. So I'm going to hit OK with this new layer mask selected. And you're going to see here now we have this whole different thing going on. Now instead of just this is turned off, this are the pixels of my image, right? And you notice I haven't thrown away any pixels. You can see in the little thumbnail that I still have all those pixels. This is what's known as a layer mask. And so in this mask, black hides and white shows, and any value in between black and white will give some value of transparency. So let's say you did this, but there were still some problematic parts that you really wanted to fix up by hand. Well, what do we do here? Well, notice down here that I can select both of these things, and depending on what I'm in, changes my context. If I have the image selected and I go to, say, draw with black, right, with my brush tool, well, it'll draw on there, and I don't want to do that. But if I have my layer selected, right, and I'll use my left bracket to make it smaller, left and right brackets make my brushes bigger and smaller, and now I paint with black, whoops, there we go, I'm in black, right, I'll go ahead and paint it, and now you see I'm actually removing things, right? So more than likely when you're doing this, you're probably really zoomed in and you're you know, fixing your stuff here, right? Now this is only after you've already done the refine and edge, and obviously I didn't refine the edges and I should have refined it completely in there using the things here. But now you see this really nice knockout so that I can use this later. And so what I would recommend is that you do this and you save it. Once you have it as clean as you possibly have, save this as a PSD file so that later you can go back. When we actually use it in our penguins thing, you're going to have to apply the layer mask, which means you actually will throw away these masks, right? So to our penguins, right, to keep our penguins going, right, first thing I'm going to go to is select subject, right? Because those penguins are there. And look, great, great, great. Except for right here, right? This belly is part of the penguin. Right here, this part is not part of the penguin, right? So it does a good job right here. It doesn't do a good job here. There's a couple things I could do before I even go to select and refine. If I really wanted to, if I wanted to remove these, maybe I'll go up here to this quick mask select. I'll take this to the negative mode. So now whatever I touch will go away. And right now I'm gonna go ahead and try to have it just get these things. Now I'm not doing a very good job. I'm gonna have to fix that. So when I go into select and mask, well, I'm gonna put this one on white, right? We see that's a bad area. So I could use that edge, but there's also much like the layer mask mode is is this one right here, the brush tool, right? So I could actually right, put this stuff back in, or right, if right here's the negative, make it smaller, get in there, right? So I could do this here and not in a layer mask. I just prefer the layer mask because no matter what, I think we should make a layer mask, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and say output it to a new layer with mask, right? Oh, I gotta hit OK. Okay, and so I see here I'm missing the belly of my penguin, right? So I need to show that. So make sure my mask is selected. Zoom in, right? I'll take my brush tool. I'll make myself kind of a big brush, right? And I'll use black to just paint, whoops, I'll use white. I'm sorry, white to paint it back in, right? So I'll just kind of paint all this back in, kind of get it as good as I can. And then I'll go in here, switch to a black to hide, make my brush smaller, right? And so this just takes time, right? So this is just as I go in, right? Again, in a raster image, right, you can edit every single pixel, right? So you got to just, sometimes it's just a matter of taking time. It's still, this is still very fast compared to kind of the olden days. You know, although the pen tool, once you get really good with it, you can be fast, right? So here, I gotta get rid of this little area here. So, you know, I'll do this and I'll make my brush, right, different sizes, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and do this, the whole thing in the video, but right, like areas where it couldn't tell, right? It couldn't tell what was going on with the penguins here. I can barely tell what's going on with the penguins here. You gotta have to kind of eyeball it a little bit to figure it out, right? So, but when you're all said and done to move on with this, is you need to knock out your penguins as well as you can. Now, it's not a big deal if you don't get it perfect, but for the Chimera project, right, you're going to have to make sure you put the time in to get as perfect of a knockout as you can.